and thank you for joining us for another episode of Hope for Healthcare with Dr. Katie Cole in partnership with ICD Healthcare Network. Dr. Katie Cole is a holistic physician, organizational well-being consultant, and change agent, working with industry leaders and proven strategies to heal our national healthcare system and our culture of medicine. Stay tuned to hear today's speaker.
Well, welcome everyone to Hope for Healthcare. Today, I have two very special guests with us. Our first guest is Bill Doherty, and we had recently done a podcast together. He is the president, CEO, and founder of ICD Event, as well as ICD Health Network. Today, we also have Frank Cutitta, and he was recently appointed as senior advisor to ICD Development, a leading producer of conferences in the healthcare segment, including events on burnout, patient experience, equity, resiliency, and literacy. Well, welcome, Bill and Frank. I am so happy to have you with us today.
Always great to be with you, Katie.
Nice to be here again.
So, you two make a very powerful partnership. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision for ICD Healthcare Network and the direction that you want to take your organization?
Frank, do you want to start this?
Yeah, well, I'll just start by saying, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here, and it's also a thrill to be working with Bill, who I've talked to for a year or so about the possible collaboration on the work that I was doing, and I used to be on the board at HIMSS, big healthcare IT organization, and was in global media around the world for most of my career. So when Bill had the vision, which you could talk a little bit about, and it's also talked about in another podcast, it just seemed a perfect fit for where I was. And Bill and I share a lot of the same kinds of passion for the business. We also have a certain degree of what I call professional ADHD, where we like to have our hands in a lot of different things and a lot of different aspects of the business, which is exhilarating for me. And I know at times dangerous for both of us, but it's just been a lot of fun working together. So Bill could sort of give you the overall vision, and then what I'll do after that is to give you my vision of how we're building this out based on the stakeholders and constituents that we have coming in to our content.
Sure.
Sounds great. Bill, take it away.
Yeah, and likewise, when Frank approached me about working together, I was all for the idea, and it's been great having somebody to bounce ideas off of, somebody who kind of thinks like me. And we're on to our next sentence before we even ask it, and it's just great. And we have a great vision for this company. We are focusing on our healthcare conferences. We were on other events in the past, but now our total focus is on the healthcare division. So we're growing this with all kinds of conferences, including the Healthcare Burnout Symposium, which is coming up in June in New York City. We have the Patient Experience Symposium, which is in the 6th year. That's in Boston. And I produced it the past 5 years, and Frank is taking it over this year. It's just his hands. I'm helping out, of course, but he's the forefront of that one there. Then we have Hospitals at Home. We're focusing on machine learning and artificial intelligence, and also healthcare equity. And in addition, we'll be doing a veterinarian burnout conference. We'll be doing a West Coast version of healthcare burnout, and we're getting to the cannabis space as well down the road. In addition to the conferences, we're building an ICD Healthcare Network. Instead of being in front of folks for just 2 days of a conference, we're building it so the other 363 days we have resources available for earning CMEs, CEs, other credits, as well as delivering resources that they can't get at one place. So, Frank, do you want to take from there?
Yeah. So traditionally, ICD was a conference company, and obviously that's content in one kind of format. But world events have changed the way that content is consumed and digested, and so we found that we had to do things other than just have, as they say in this business, putting butts in seats in conference rooms. And so what we had to do is obviously be part of the digital transformation movement ourselves. My background is before I even got into global media and international business, it was as a special ed teacher, actually. So I always see my core brand as being an educator in whatever I do, whether it's working for ICD or working for HIMSS or teaching at Northeastern University, where I spent part of my time. So what I'm looking at here, what we're looking at is that we have this incredible body of knowledge called the ICD Healthcare Network, which is largely composed of on-demand recordings that we do of all our events. We were one of the first companies to actually record everything, not even knowing about COVID, but we recorded them because we wanted to have the archives of those. But that's just not enough for people just to spend those 2 days. So our vision is that we provide what I call continuous information service, as Bill mentioned, for the other 362 or 3 days during the year. And the interesting thing is that when we look at healthcare, we look at it as being in pillars, and we do that ourselves in terms of the way that the architecture for our company is. That we have burnout, we have literacy, we have resiliency. So we have these pillars, but the reality of the modern brand of the healthcare professional is that they have to be cross-functional. They have to be double deep and triple deep in their skills, and it has to cross the line. So you can't just be a burnout person without understanding the other aspects of patient engagement, for example. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a way through our site and through our content that people can build their personal brands to have the complexity that's required in this day and age. For example, we're going to be doing an equity conference. I just saw that for the first time today, there's just an announcement that Intermountain launched their first equity vice president in Intermountain, of all places. It's the first time they've done it, which is really showing that some of these concepts and some of these brands are in their infancy. If Intermountain is just doing it for the first time in equity, then it sort of shows that this brand building process is going to be going on in a lot of different places. So we want to be there and make sure that the equity person has an understanding of what the IT person is doing, and that the IT person has an understanding of what the burnout person is doing. It's sort of like asking your IT people to come in to the human resources meetings during the year, or the human resources people to go to the IT meetings to understand what that constituent is thinking. So we want to build these complex brands and have the ability for people not only to go into the pillar that they're interested in, that they subscribe to go to the live event, but also to go with lateral thinking into the other areas where they say, I'd like to be an equity person, but I want to be an equity person that's hyphenated with IT. So how can I be an IT equity person? So we want to provide that complexity of brand, and then as educators provide a curriculum for them to do that.
Frank, that was very well said. And that is really exciting. This is really a new concept. And especially we've been talking about how healthcare is so siloed. And there's all these different aspects to healthcare, and especially with the well-being community now, having a central place with your organization where, whether you're a healthcare CEO, a leader, a physician, a nurse, a patient, or you're in AI or tech, you can come to your organization and understand more about the other experiences. So you're taking away that separation between the silos.
Exactly.
Yeah, connecting.
Right. We see a place in this too. There is a commercial part of this business, obviously, but we see this as a gathering place for vendors, because at many of the vendors that we communicate with, on Monday the person might be doing manufacturing software, on Tuesday it might be finance software, and then Wednesday is my healthcare day. So they might be carrying what we used to call in the business a big bag. And they have a desperate need, in our experience, of learning the business. So whereas the typical professionals, the wellness directors and the equity directors, they have a role in learning the business as well. The vendors really need to be able to speak to these people intelligently about some of these concepts, and they're not easy even for the people that are in the business. So if you're coming in from manufacturing software on Monday and selling healthcare on Wednesday, it's a pretty stiff learning curve. So, we see the content that we have not only useful for the professionals, but we also see it useful for the commercial community that's got to figure this out as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, this sounds like a marvelous platform. And how did you decide this was the area that you wanted to get involved in, Frank?
Me, that's
You've got quite a story,
we might have to go
audience.
another hour. I have a very checkered background, all legal, by the way, but I have a very checkered background, so a number of years ago, I was asked to be on the global board of directors of HIMSS, this healthcare IT organization, based on the international content experience that I'd done around the world in launching PC World, Computer World, Info World, the Dummies books around the world. I fell in love with healthcare based on that. I had no business really being in it. What happened was that I have a voracious appetite. I have had a lifelong love for learning as a professor and an academic. So once I get into something like this, it becomes all consuming. My wife knows this as a fact. It's just, I just become an animal. And that happened with healthcare. There was an interesting turning point that happened 2 years ago in that not only was I writing and researching and developing content and organizing media companies, I suddenly was hoisted to be part of the patient perspective. And I spent 100 days hospitalized in Boston. I was one of the first COVID patients at Mass General. Spent 100 days in the hospital, 45 in a coma, and then spent the rest of my time learning how to walk and survived. And I'm actually healthier than I ever was. But what really turned me on to a different aspect of this business, and I know Bill has had his own personal experiences with this, is that the moment I woke up from a coma, being the professor and the writer that I was, I said, I'm going to start conducting primary research on patient engagement from my bed. And on the 46th day, which is actually 2 years ago this week, I woke up and started writing and doing webinars and talking to people and just watching what was going on around me. That was fantastic because it brought me back to life. But there are many horrible things that were challenging, not disastrous, but challenging as a patient, related to interoperability and a lot of the technological parts of patient engagement that were newsworthy as far as I was concerned. So I got into that to the extent that I was then appointed to the board of the Patient Family Advisory Board, co-chair at Spalding Health Network, where I now provide that patient and family perspective. And so that's the long answer to a short question, is that's the other aspect that we, and Bill could talk to this. We try to bring the patient perspective in because that's the ultimate customer.
Well, we don't have a hospital and we don't have a healthcare facility without patients.
Exactly.
And we are all patients.
Right. And it's going into the home now. So patients are in different places. So it has to be delivered differently. But the patient perspective is so incredibly different. But many of them just aren't able to talk about it. Some of them just want it to go away because they're done with it. And some, which is the indicative of the industry and the problem in general, some don't have the language and communication skills to verbalize it. That was one of the biggest problems that we found at the early days of COVID, is they couldn't verbalize to people that understood what their ailments were. And that's why it took such a hard hit on the lower income and minority groups. So we watch that very closely as part of the ICD mission. But we also take it very personally. I mean, I've got my own personal experiences. Bill's family has gone through these experiences himself, his partner. So it's just, it's just built into the central nervous system of our organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you certainly have, not only do you have a massive amount of experience building businesses, Frank, and being an educator and a professor, how you also have the patient experience during COVID at the beginning of the pandemic. And then with Bill's experiences as well with his own family health concerns, I think that you both bring a lot of humanism and understanding and compassion to what we're trying to do to heal our healthcare system.
Well, the patient experience is affected by burnout. The caregiver experience is affected by it. So it's all one big ecosystem, and it should all be covered together.
Yeah, I really like that term, ecosystem. That really pulls everything together. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to Bill's point, my first experience was that I started writing about loneliness because I was going through clinical loneliness when I was in there. And I one of the doctors that was a weekend warrior there, that was an oncologist, didn't even belong in that ward where I was, asked me what I was writing about. I told him about loneliness. And he said, well, do you realize how lonely I am? I said, what do you mean how lonely you are? And it was my first jolt into what he was going through, that I was going through as well. I didn't understand how he could possibly be lonely, taking care of patients and having the hectic nature of what was going on. And to Bill's point, what I found out that there are a lot of lonely people treating lonely people. And there are a lot of burnout people treating burnout people. So it's this vicious cycle of one fueling the other, that the more lonely people you're treating, the lonelier you get. There's the job satisfaction starts to slip. So, we're looking at those issues. The other thing that we're looking at, Katie, is that we're not immune from controversy in this organization. That we actually encourage it in terms of some of the content that we have. I talk about the difference between fireside chats and fireside spats that I think we need in this business, because there's a lot of agreement going on. And I know wellness people are much more complacent in terms of getting along with each other than a lot of the IT people. But I think there are certain areas where people need a healthy debate about things. There's a lot of debate about things like artificial intelligence. There's a lot of debate about moral injury versus burnout. It's just like, where are these things? So, I think what we're trying to build into the way that we're thinking in this personal brand building is that we're trying to say that, we need healthy contrarians to come in and bring up points of view that are different, because it's so easy to get caught in the undertow or the tide of what's happening. And it's very difficult in some places to say, whoa, I'm not sure that's the way we really want to go. So we want to hear those opposing views whenever we can, not destructive, not contrary to the normal thinking about COVID and vaccines or things like that, but related to organizational and enterprise issues, which are really, really important to sort of argue these out before you start building the plan.
I agree. And, the best leader is a molder of consensus. And that's a quote by Martin Luther King, I believe, but it's one of those quotes that always sticks with me. And, this is such a fabulous time in America right now, because we already had a sick healthcare system for decades, but the pandemic really highlighted it and exacerbated what was already going on. And this is a wonderful time for us right now to redesign and rebuild and transform our healthcare systems, and look at what is working well and look at what isn't working well, and how can we, bridge that and transform over the next decade and create a much more adaptive, flexible, brighter healthcare system.
Yes, and I think it's important to draw from experiences from other industries as well, and we try to do that with all our programs.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that'll be included in the upcoming conferences that we have. Some of the best sessions have been lessons learned, and not only lessons learned that here's what you can do, but especially when people are coming in. We've had people from Ritz-Carlton and places like that who've said, I don't care how good you are, it's just not going to happen in healthcare. It just doesn't. It's not built that way. That we could look for these great things, that I want to turn something into Zoom or into Google or into some popular app. But healthcare is different. I think the interesting thing is, to Bill's point, is that what can other industries learn from healthcare? And we tend to be a generation behind in some things, but there are some things that are so totally unique to healthcare that other people don't even think about, especially as it relates to privacy and compliance and HIPAA and things like that. In other compliance sensitive businesses like finance, that really become important for them. And I think a lot of people think, it's healthcare, I just can't learn something from that. But I think we need to be educating them as well about what healthcare can teach.
Well, and if we're educating each other during this process in transition, we're more likely to take the most successful aspects of what we've accomplished and create a healthier foundation and platform for healthcare, as well as organizations. And they have a better way of interfacing with healthcare as well, if they understand what we're going through and they're part of that transformation process.
Exactly. We're finding with burnout, for example, that it just crosses so many different industries. I mean, so it was a natural in healthcare because we knew clinical burnout was a really big deal. But I mean, we found out that the Veterinarian Association contacts us to say, oh my God, the vets have one of the highest. There's one of the customers talking right now.
He's in agreement, apparently, with veterinarians suffering from burnout.
It's a trigger. It's a trigger word. So I mean, but we just found out that that these veterinarians, especially the vet techs, had some very, very high suicide rates and extremely high mental health problems because of their emotional attachment with the animals and the fact that there's not the same kind of insurance and the social safety net's not there for Fluffy. So I mean, but we found out that this is not a spoiler alert, but we found out that sports trainers have a high level of burnout, and we find out that that just so many other industries. Bill has bumped into them all himself. I'm sure people that were in Bill's seafood business during the early days are saying, "Oh my God, this fish stuff is killing me." So I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, it is so ubiquitous, and there are so many things that that are universal in terms of treating burnout that aren't just clinical burnout, but are the same for all levels of burnout or moral injury that we could apply across the board for other industries, while at the same time keeping something that is completely unique to vet tech burnout that has nothing to do with what a nurse might be going through in a regular human hospital. So that's actually, I think, for me, as somebody who loves this voracious appetite for learning, it's so fascinating. It's depressing at times, but fascinating to find how these issues, all of them, cross so many different verticals.
They do. And burnout is a worldwide problem, I understand. It's not even just America. There are, Europe has been dealing with burnout for decades, and it's not a new concept.
Well, that's a really important point, and it really goes back to what I've been teaching for the last 15 years. I teach a graduate program in cross-cultural communications at Northeastern, and so everything I look at has this cross-cultural aspect. To your point, so is there a different nuance to burnout in Asia because the nature of the society and the way they hold things in and the relationship with harmony? So, I mean, you can make a lot of mystique in this that might not actually be there, but at the same time, there are some really important nuances to healthcare from a cross-cultural point of view. For example, I talk about the cross-cultural aspects of pain and how people address it and describe pain. It could be dramatically different between Chinese people and Russian people, for example. So those kinds of issues of especially as healthcare organizations are becoming global and establishing a global footprint, like you see with Cleveland Clinic and Mayo and UPMC, those are the differences between success and failure as not only you're treating people, but as you're marketing yourself around the world as a healthcare organization.
Well, yes. And, one of the things that I found very fascinating is Dr. Christina Masloch spoke at the January symposium on burnout in San Francisco several months ago. And she really highlighted that, she's been consulting worldwide for over, isn't it close to 30 years on burnout? And what she has noticed and studied is that there are a common theme of 6 drivers of burnout worldwide. And that is what she has developed her metrics and tests on. So it's very interesting that there may be different cultural components to the drivers of burnout worldwide. However, there are some underlying themes. And so if we can really pull together as a country and a globe and find out, what the solutions are really working well, then I think that we can have a very successful healthcare transformation.
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right. I talk about universals and the particulars. So global chassis, local body is the way I describe it. So when you look at healthcare being delivered that way, there are the universal themes. It's the local body that really becomes tricky. For example, in shame cultures, talking about someone having to admit that they're going through burnout in a shame culture, even compared to cultures like our own, where we're not a shame culture, but it's still very difficult. You don't want that smudge on your record. So you add the smudge on your record with the shame culture, like in many places in Asia, on top of that, and it magnifies the effect exponentially. So it becomes interesting to look at those nuances, but not to fixate on them, because you could easily start driving yourself crazy by saying that everybody's different when they're really not in many regards.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, this is really exciting. I'm really happy for the both of you for coming together and partnering in this organization. And you have a lot of wonderful things to look forward to. I'm excited also that you are partnering with Hope for Healthcare podcast. I'm looking forward to collaborating with you in the coming years. So
looking forward to it too.
Looking forward to it. I think we're doing our best to impact healthcare, and I look forward to working doing that with you.
Yes. Well, Bill and Frank, is there anything else that you want our audience to know about your organization? I know one thing that we talked about before is that you're really solutions focused. And so that's the thing is, we've had like a decade, maybe even more than that, of awareness. And now we know what the issues are and the problems. But you're really now taking your organization to the next level where each conference, each webinar, just like with my podcast, each session is really solutions focused on resolving burnout and promoting professional fulfillment across the continuum.
And that's what makes us stand out from other, there's a lot of conferences out there, but for instance, the Burnout Conference, our Burnout Conference offers solutions, not just to go there, find out if it's a problem. The folks that attend already know that it is a problem. And it's great to generate awareness about the problem, of course, but our conferences are there to solve problems and to offer solutions, and folks can actually go back to their organizations, make change by attending our conferences. Sometimes they do it right when they're on the seat. They go to the cell phone, and as Frank mentioned to me earlier, and they just text somebody and they make change there. So we've seen change happen from our conferences, and we're really happy about that. And that's what we're driving to do, is offer changes, not just going there and soaking in how bad the problem is. You can leave there and actually make changes at your own organization.
Yeah, the true test of our business is to Bill's point, is the ability to replicate what we're talking about there, because we have a lot of big organizations that come in and people say, I never could have the budget to do that. It's Mayo Clinic. How am I going to get the kind of money that Mayo has? I'm a small rural hospital in Maine. So that replicability part, regardless of the size of the organization, is really, really important. It's also solutions, but I mean, some of these things are dying to find an aspect of innovation. So I mean, we're working on an equity conference right now, and we're looking for innovation in equity. Not that we're going in and giving a test to everyone the first week on their job to the typical equity training, but how are we actually innovating and driving change? And more importantly, the other thing that we always look for are ways of measuring the success of what you're doing, because somebody back in the C-suite with an F next to his name, CFO, is going to be saying, it's not me. We just spent $2 million on this, and I am totally for equity, but what? I'm totally for solving burnout, but what did we get for our money? And that's a really harsh reality, and we don't like to dwell on that. It's like, I'm not supposed to be talking about that. This is a wellness conference. But at the same time, it's the reality of the business. So that's why, in terms of, in addition to having the solutions that we're looking to have CFOs understand chief wellness officers and chief wellness officers understanding enterprise IT, so that when all these people get together in a room, the CFO can say, I got it now. This is a much more qualitative accounting that I have to do than a quantitative spreadsheet that I'm used to doing. So that's why solutions are really, really important, and being able to quantify them are going to be a mainstay of the conferences that we're doing.
Yeah, we are covering the economies of burnout with Dr. Steve Strongwater and others at the conference in June. And
you said the economies of burnout?
Yeah, the economy. So you can find out the financial impact of dealing with burnout, and so you can adjust it with the CFO. Always wants to know how is it going to impact the bottom line. So you can go back to your organization and address it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Critical.
Well, it is very critical, because any CEO, COO, CFO of a health system, chief wellbeing officer even, is going to want to know, hey, if I invest like $5 million in this coaching program, and we do this for the health system, how is that going to impact my bottom line? Because the 5 million has to come from somewhere. So if we take it from this section and invest in well-being, am I going to make a profit? Am I going to break even? Like, what's going to be the long-term gain over the next year to 2 years? So I think it's really important to talk about the financial aspect of what we're doing. And we do have metrics that show profitability with resolving burnout.
Well, I was on a call the other day where the healthcare organization was saying, a branch of a large healthcare organization was saying we could hire 45 nurses today, and we're replacing ones that we had, and we need even more than 45, but that's what we need today. And the other part is that they said that I don't even know where they went. I don't know where they went because I know they didn't go to another hospital. So, I mean, this is what we're seeing in this. So when you talk to a CFO of, first of all, it gives them heartburn because, the thought of hiring 45 nurses, that's a lot of money. But the fact that they've lost 45 and the patient engagement suffers because of that, and the brand image suffers because somebody reads in the news that or looks in the on the one ads that to the extent that they have them anymore, that this organization needs 45 nurses, and people say, I think grandma's in that hospital and they need 45 nurses. It's, it has a lot of different impacts that chief financial officers really will pay attention to.
Well, I know I'm really looking forward to the upcoming symposium in June and seeing both of you in person in New York. And I know that there's some pre-conference workshops that are on, is it June 22nd on that Wednesday?
June 22nd, there's 4 workshops. You can choose 2 of those.
Okay. And for our audience, if you're unable to make the conference in person in June, I urge you to go and, register online with ICD events, and you will have online access, right?
Right, you can sign up for the ICD Healthcare Network, and 2 weeks after the conference, approximately 2 weeks afterward, we'll be uploading all the sessions that are recorded, as well as looking back and seeing all the sessions from January and other conferences we've done, and other resources will be available on the network. So we encourage, if you're unable to make it to New York, to make sure you sign up for the network. If you do come and attend in New York, you'll automatically have 6 months of the network afterward as well.
And that's fabulous, because I know sometimes I go back months later and I say, I want to re-listen to that presentation again, or that was some really great information. So,
well, if you want one track, session from another track, you can do that as well.
Okay.
Katie, you have a great audience. If anybody out there listening to us right now has ideas on new content themes, or is interested in proposing something or writing something, we're always looking from the outside in. So we don't have all the great ideas sitting here. We like people that are out there in the field that are experienced this, whether in burnout or patient experience. But we encourage your audience to contact us with ideas and themes that they feel are important.
Wonderful.
And also regarding our network too, we encourage groups. So if there's a health system that wants to send all their members to join and be part of this, we're definitely open to group rates. Feel free to contact us.
Great. Well, and how can our audience get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
You could email info@icdevents.com.
Okay.
They'll get to one of us, or you can visit our website at for the conference in June. It's stophealthcareburnout.com, or you can see all our upcoming events at icdevents.com, or some of them at our website icdevents.com.
Perfect. And everyone, I will have all this information uploaded on our website for drkattiecole.com, and it'll be on the podcast Hope for Healthcare webpage. Also, we will be posting on social media, and Bill and Frank will have this podcast and information as well. So there are multiple avenues for you to reach out to them.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, in wrapping up today, thank you both for being our guest on Hope for Healthcare. And, I'm so happy that you're launching ICD Healthcare Network. It's much needed in this community. And I look forward to seeing, how you grow and expand over the next several years. And
thank you. I just want to add that we are partnering with Class Research and other organizations too. So if there's an organization out there that wants to contribute to our network, please feel free to reach out.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for upcoming podcasts and more information on the upcoming symposium.
Thanks, Katie.
Bye.